So, guys, this is my review of Spirit Chronicles episode 4 that dropped today. And as always, if you're here for my reviews of this anime and other anime that I'm watching on the side that I am not reacting to here on the channel, definitely stick around. But if you're here for specific anime that I am reacting to, as always, stick around here on the channel. But with that, guys, let's jump into this new episode of Spirit Chronicles. So, Rio had basically moved on from Beltram. Basically, he moves on. He's been traveling for 3 days. As we open up the episode, he's basically talking to, or basically he's writing, but he's like kind of like speaking from his mind. Uh, he is actually writing to Celia, or at least preparing to, as we see in this episode. He's preparing to write a letter to Celia, but in that letter, he is just basically like talking about his journey. He basically had been 3 days travel. He ends up coming. He's traveling through the Straw region, and he basically lands in the kingdom of Garlock, and a town market called Amande. And a few things happen while he's here in Amande that we definitely want to talk about here in this video. Now, if we remember at the very end of episode 3, Count Huguenot basically had went to the jail, the jail, the dungeon of the castle. He had approached this young lady here, specifically in this image, who basically was, and I forgot to mention that the title of the episode is called The Assassin Girl. So basically, he commanded this girl here in the image, Latifa, to basically hunt down and kill Rio. And I forgot to like put a note in the comments of my review of episode 3 from last week, because I at the time I didn't remember that Huguenot had actually commanded Latifa to actually go after and pretty much kill him, basically assassinate Rio, because of the title too. It's basically about her specifically, but basically during Rio's entrance into the marketplace here, he's just basically just like talking about the marketplace and everything like that, and he feels like somebody was watching him. He had his back turned, and then he spins around to look back towards the entrance, but he doesn't see anything. He was just saying like he feels like he's on edge. Basically, that's what he was saying, and he keeps walking. But Latifa ends up popping up from the shadows here, but that lets us know that she indeed is following him during his journey. Which again, per this episode, the episode is she is one of the main focuses of episode 4. So as we move forward, as always in anime, and you can even say like in Disney, like there's always marketplaces where there's shopping, right? And specifically here in episode 4 of Spirit Chronicles, we have Rio here going shopping, because he also talks about that in his letter to Celia, that he's looking for specific items and goods and stuff per his journey to keep him moving forward. And he comes across this chef who is actually selling pasta, and yes, he's actually selling pasta. That's what the name of the food item here that he's selling is called, by this woman named Lizzo Latte, and she created this pasta dish. There are other items inside the dish, that the bowls of the dish look really, really good, by the way. But but at the same time, when when the chef said the name pasta Rio, it connected. It brought up his past life of Haruto, where he remembered back then, during his past life, that of course he too enjoyed the delicacy of pasta. So, there's a reason for this specific spot in the scene where he's talking about there's pasta in this new reincarnated life of Rio here specifically. So it's definitely not a coincidence that pasta, the name of the food item and stuff that's being sold here is called that, and we will gain more key info on this stuff moving forward. Now, during his conversation with the chef, even a little bit more. Now he's sitting there, he's eating his pasta dish, pasta bowl, and he also has another flashback memory of him and his mother, and the conversation about him going back to Yagumo and him making the promise to be able to go back to that region to see his parents. That, or even just the region itself, that the chef ends up guiding him towards this place, which is called the Rika Merchant Guild. And here people would come shop for even more items. There's another place for people that bought these items called I believe it's called Minchiu. It was like Minchiu beef, Minchiu cheese, and stuff like that. There was some ladies selling some items to some people that we saw as well. But specifically here, they have Rio walk into the building, but then he's actually the camera's panning up, and we get to actually see what the inside of the entire guild looks like. But again, that's not the main focus of the guild. It's this specific person and what's to come next. Now, once he is like finished, being in awe of the guild, this woman here, speaks to him, and she basically just tells him that, he's basically telling him that weapons are not allowed in the guild itself. He has to leave it basically here at the counter, and they will watch over his weaponry. But as he's removing his weapon and stuff, this woman here, his because he was wearing that hoodie still, his hoodie came off, and she sits back and she says, "Oh, he has black hair." Now, there's a reason why she says this, and one of the reasons I believe that she's saying this in my immediate in my first viewing of this episode is that when I really look at a lot of the other characters within the show up to this point, 4 episodes in, he literally is the only character that we've seen with black hair. Everybody else got, they had, as we all seen, they've had like purple hair. Of course, she has blue hair. And that's the other thing, guys, that I wanted to mention is that her name is Latte. She says, my name is Latte, and I'm actually gonna be able to help you shop and do your shopping and stuff like that. But she like I said, she has blue hair. Other characters have various colors of hair, except for Rio, who, again, like I said, up to this point, the only one who has he's the only one that has black hair out of all of the characters, which, again, I didn't notice this until this moment in time when she says it about the color of his hair. And so, like I said before, Latte, she basically tells him that she's going to be helping him with all of his, all the shopping needs. And of course, we have various spots of images of them shopping for various goods. As you see here, there's cheese. He's also shopping for candies, snacks, breads and stuff. She really just is real helpful to help him pick the various items that he's looking to purchase, because he's still, he's traveling through the straw region to get closer and closer to hopefully getting to his home region of Yagumo. So, just seeing him shop, and seeing the various, the colors of the items, all of that stuff, it was just really cool to see during these spots here between him and Latte. Now, after he has done all of his shopping, it was I feel like this was like courtesy from Latte here, as a thank you for spending his money here, that she basically found him a nice little quiet place off to the a little room off to the side. She had him. She gave him a nice cup of hot black tea. Just like I said, just very nice and very courteous of her to do this because he had been traveling for 3 days and more likely didn't have any time to really rest. But as they're sitting, I believe at some point there must have been a conversation about him and his travels and him actually writing the this letter back to Celia. There's a reason why bringing this up because they actually have a seat. They conversate a little bit, and Latte asks him about asked him about him knowing, and it was kind of like interesting that she was able to pick this up, but Latte basically said like I I I kind of have a feeling like you know a little bit about the taste of black tea, and then that's when he brings up the fact that his relationship with Celia. He didn't name drop her, but he just said I had a friend who drank it a lot, and I drank it with her. But Latte says, well then, if that's the case, maybe you can tell what the ingredients of this tea is. He takes another sip, and then he just says like the smell, the texture, the intricacies. You know, this tea is really just on point. Basically, is what he was saying. Um, and Latte was like, well, we strive at making our black tea the best during negotiations. So this lets me kind of know like Latte does more than just what she has here. Yeah, because obviously it is a guild that she works at. But there has to be other things that happen because again, like I said, it's a guild, so there has to be more stuff. You know, and there must be some people coming through here all the time, maybe even using this room. And she provides that specific black tea for people who are sitting down to have these negotiations for whatever they're negotiating when it was pertaining to whatever it is, business wise, um, per whomever's coming through there. So this conversation was very interesting, but at the same time, Rio just believed that there was something about this town, something there was something that because of the pasta and stuff like that, plus the you know the place here, stuff like this. Just he said it even prior to moving forward past the chef. He just said it just felt like home to him, specifically here, um, in this town. So there obviously there has to be a connection of something from latte, from the pasta, from the tea. There has to be a connection from that, and even her partner, Cosette, that's her name there. She says as and like that, like they the reason why I brought up the letter, them talking about the letters. Latte also mentions after their conversation about the tea, she mentions like, hey, we can prepare to send off that we can prepare to send off that letter to for you. And of course, like I said, there had to have been a conversation about that, about his travels and about him writing that letter back to Celia. Like I said, he didn't name drop her. I don't think he said anything to Latte about Celia, but he just he had to mention that because there was no reason, no point for for Latte to bring up to bring up them sending the letter off for him back to Celia. So, but Cosette, one of the other things that she does mention, she literally, as Rio is leaving, Cosette says that boy was a very mysterious person. Was he not? Lesolate. There it is, right there, guys. This is Lesolate. She literally says to Cosette, I go by Latte now. So she changed her name. Something must have happened with her life that where she was known. And then like that's the other thing. Latte, the chef had said that Latte is the she's the one that governs this town. So this lets you know that Latte has a bigger role within the town itself, not just per this guild, she must be of something of more importance of a person here in this town, more than just this a part of this guild and selling these items to people. So all of this stuff, just this spot here in this scene, it was just such a great scene that I really just loved everything about just this town. uh, once Rio passed through here, had these conversations with various people, and then leaving, it was just a really really uh, great scenes to me during this episode, in episode 4. Now, after Rio leaves that town, he eventually he's traveling at basically at light speed. Basically, he as you see he has his aura activated, and his enhancement, his magical enhancement. He was traveling like that even at the beginning of the episode, but he reactivates it running through the forest here, and eventually he basically runs into Latifah here, but she basically plays like unconscious. She was lying on her stomach. He was in the middle of running, he runs in her path, and he basically stops and tries to look to see if she's okay. But Latifah, because her eyes were closed, she snaps her eyes open, and she literally shoots out this pointy dart out of her from her mouth, and it hits Rio in his wrist. I believe it was his left wrist, and that dart was a poisonous dart. He noticed it, but within that moment in time of him noticing it, he uses some other extra magic to get rid of the poison. And this was actually the actual first time that we see in this anime where he uses a different type of magic. It was the magic that he used was a different color too. It was green. Now as we see here, he's shrouded in this blue enhancement magic. Even Latifah activates her own physical enhancement magic to fight him, and that's the thing. Like, even prior to her activating it, like their fight scene, even prior to her activating it was really cool. She had a lot of speed to her. So once she activates her physical enhancement, Rio even says to himself like, she didn't even have her magic enhancement activated. So now I wonder how much faster she can be. So the fight scene itself between these two were really really cool. But again, Latifah notices that the poison wasn't having an effect, but she didn't notice that he used magic to get rid of the poison. It maybe because of the fact that she just wasn't really paying attention. I mean, he was not that far away from her for her to see him grab his wrist and use the magic, but or maybe she couldn't see the magic itself on him. So it was just like one of those things where I was just like, it's kind of interesting that she definitely knows that she poisoned him, but she then notices that the poison isn't working. So, but she didn't realize that he could use magic. But again, there's a reason why he's using magic specifically during these scenes. Now, eventually, he does indeed beat Latifah, and he eventually, not he eventually like, he doesn't knock her out. She like kind of cries. She doesn't, because she, per her circumstance, she does not, she's basically stating like, I don't want to die. She's crying, and eventually Rio uses some magic to put her to sleep, basically. So again, like I say, he doesn't really knock her out. He kind of like holds her down to basically stop her from moving. But during the fact that he ends up putting her, like tying her up, basically ties her up, and he notices that she's wearing a collar, and he knows what type of collar it is. But I say this a lot of times, even during my reactions. I say, what are the odds, right? And this is one of those situations where it's like, what are the odds that he comes across Latifah, who's charged to assassinate him, and she's wearing this collar, the slave collar, and he, prior to him leaving Rio during his own study, he ends up fighting this magical, magician book on spells and stuff like that, and he comes across this page here in the book on locks on specific locks, and it definitely looks like the lock that um, the neck lock that Latifah is wearing. And with that, we also end up seeing something else that he ends up using during this scene. And that basically is here because, like I said earlier, during the fight at least, that he used a specific spell to heal the poison from his body, and his one hand turned a greenish color, magical color. Here specifically, when he brought up the magical book that he was reading and spells and stuff like that, he activates uh, his right hand, right arm, and that magic color is red, and he calls the spell dispel, which of course is to deactivate a specific spell, and he actually uses it on the collar that Latifah is wearing, in which it actually does indeed unlock that collar from her neck, and it frees her from because basically she was being controlled per this collar, but he unlocked it, and he basically freed her from that control. Now, while Latifah is sleeping, she ends up having this dream um, that actually is it's not an actual dream. It's just something that uh, it's like it's basically like a nightmare, but it was a real nightmare, right? What ends up happening, it still coincides with what I was talking about with the town, Amandi, and the pasta and stuff. Latifah coincides with that, to where what we find out is that, if you remember back in episode 1, Haruto's riding that bus, and the bus basically gets hit, it veers off and gets hit by the train. What ends up happening, we find out that Latifah is actually the little girl on that bus who was riding that bus. She died along with Haruto, who in turn gets reincarnated into Latifah. So when she died and got reincarnated into Latifah, she wakes up here where she has a face to face with him. He calls her by Latifah. She's like, "Wait, that's not my name. My name is Endo Suzune," and he snaps back and says, "No, your name is Latifah, and I'm your esteemed big brother. Say my call me esteemed big brother." And he forces her, even with even because he's holding that chain there, she already is wearing the control, the collar controller on, right? So he activates that controller collar. It's torturing her around her neck and stuff, and he forces her to do his bidding, to where she basically does indeed believe that her new name is Latifah, and she kind of is forgetting her past life. So she, of course, does not remember, you know, uh, Endo Suzune anymore, and now she's Latifah. She's a trained assassin now, and again, she's being controlled by him, from back at the Royal Academy here. But again, like I said, it's just tying things very slowly, in which I really did. I didn't like this specific scene because she was getting tortured, but I like the fact that we gain key information that Latifah is actually the little girl from riding on the bus, and she too has been reincarnated, which kind of lets me know that Latte must have been another person who was reincarnated from the reality that we knew Haruto from, and the reason why she brings the pasta and stuff into that town and stuff like that. And it's a big hit with the town folk in there and stuff like that. So just some key things here in episode 4 that was just really interesting to see during this episode. Now, eventually, Latifah wakes up, and she, she's afraid for her life. She didn't know really what Rio was gonna do, but Rio, it was interesting moving forward over the next like several minutes that I'm gonna try to wrap up this video. For the most part, there's a couple extra scenes that I want to talk about, but specifically here with them, there was something that I felt was a bit weird on Rio's spot when it pertains to his conversation here with Latifah. Again, he still has her tied up. Because again, she's a threat to him. Right now, he basically he freed her from the collar. He tells her that she's going through the motions of being released. She doesn't she's sort of grateful to be released, but at the same time she's gotten so used to it, it's become like second nature for her to be controlled by somebody. So Rio is basically telling her like, you're free from the controller collar. You don't need to be, you don't have to worry about doing things and having somebody tell you what to do. You can do stuff on your own. But if I release you, how will I know that you won't try to attack me? And she just was just saying like, I promise I won't. You freed me. I will. Just I'm grateful and stuff like that. But and eventually he does indeed take the tie. He cuts the cuts her hands loose and stuff like that. But during their conversation though, he's talking to her, just about like, hey, you're free. You can go about your business, do what you want to do. But Latifah, because, like I said before, because she's been reincarnated from being Indo Suzune to Latifah, she doesn't know what to do next. She doesn't know how to go about life. She's still basically like a kid too at that. So it's just like one of those things like, she's a child. She doesn't know where to go, how to survive on her own, live her life on her own, feed, hunt for food, and all that, all the normal survival stuff. She was just a trained assassin. So it's just like, she just was teary eyed and just didn't know what to do. So eventually, Rio was just telling her like, hey, like, all right, I'll allow you to to continue to live. I will. I need to move on, but don't make it seem like I wouldn't look to harm you either, because you were taught by humans how to be this way. I'm a human too. Don't expect me to uh he was basically saying like, don't expect me to maybe possibly treat you differently because you're still a threat to me. But again, like during this conversation, he tells her that, he even tells her like, I don't trust you for you to be, for me to fully commit to having you with me. And eventually she does indeed join him. But again, it was weird that he says this, but at the same time, during their travels, he does indeed show some trust towards her. Like he feeds her a sandwich. He actually sits next to her during him feeding, you know, giving her this sandwich. He made a sandwich for himself and he made her one. But it was just like one of those things from my perspective. I was just like, I found that very interesting that he tells her to her face like, I'm a human being. I could easily still use you the way that you've been used to being used, and uh, to still control you. And I don't trust you to be around me. But he still, like I said, he still showed some sort of trust towards her. Like me, I would have been like, okay, here's your sandwich, and I would have kept my distance. He sat literally right. They were sitting on a rock. He sat literally right next to her, while and watched her eat this sandwich. So it was just like one of those things where I was just like, huh, that's just really kind of weird for him to say, like, yeah, I don't trust you enough. But he showed some trust because he literally sat right next to her while she ate the sandwich. But of course, she ends up like crying because the sandwich was so amazing tasting, and the food that she got in that dungeon was basically like dungeon food. She said that she was told that it was pet food, and they did different various things to torture her and stuff. And he like patted her back to just comfort her and stuff like that. So it was just one of those weird things for me that I really just was just like, I don't really necessarily agree with the fact that you told her that I don't trust you, but you still showed some trust by sitting next to her while feeding her. But again, I still like the fact that he still did it anyway, just to ease the tension that he had towards her at least. But again, at the same time, it was just really really weird to me, guys. Now I know I said I was gonna eventually wrap this video, but it was, like I said, it was just a couple extra scenes that I wanted to talk about. This is closer towards the end. Um, so basically, they traveled. We also had gotten a scene from Celia. She had received his letter. She knows that where he's headed. She realized that he's been gone and traveling through the past 3 days and stuff like that. That was just that scene. But we also get some more of Latifah and Rio here, where they were traveling. She they end up eating some food. He ends up making that pasta dish that he had back at the town there, back at Amandi, right? But the key thing to note is that Latifah says it's spaghetti. She literally calls that. He's like shocked, like, spaghetti. I didn't know that you knew what spaghetti was. She was like, I would eat spaghetti all the time and stuff like that. But it what she was saying was talking about stuff from her past life. So it was just like one of those things that she didn't even realize that she was remembering a moment, a meal, specifically spaghetti, from her past life. Because for sure she wasn't getting spaghetti back at the dungeon. But with that, during this scene here, when he's comforting her and she's asleep and she's having nightmares, she's dreaming of her mother and her dad, and uh, I believe maybe like a big brother, because she says Onisan. She's crying, and like I said, he's comforting her. She even says like, I want to go back home to Tokyo. Boom, right there. He's like, Tokyo. So he realizes that she too was reincarnated from a past life, and brought here through this reincarnated life of Latifah, all alone by herself, and it must have been hard for her. So this too lets him know that somebody else, that he's not alone in this reincarnation state of this new life. He has somebody else now by his side that also too has been reincarnated. But something else occurs moving forward towards the end of this episode. Now they continue to travel together. They travel through wilderness. They're traveling through, like, there was tornado. They traveled through some tornado weather, some rainy weather, some snow, icy ground. They even fought like this big, huge, gigantic uh, bird together, and then eventually they get to this point where they are drawing close to this tree, and this looks like another destination that they're traveling to, because eventually, um, they they go back to sleep, and then they wake up in the morning, and Latifah's like, I want you to make that omelet with the cheese that you made for me before. He's like, cool, we'll make the omelet. But he asks her, he says, Latifah, are you sure that you don't notice? He points in the direction of the tree. He said, are you sure you don't notice that big tree here? And she says, that place that you were talking about before, she says, all I see is a forest. So she doesn't see this gigantic tree out in the open. Only Rio notices it. But then he also mentions that he's questioning, like, if she can't see it, is it being blocked from people's awareness through magic? So it's just really, really interesting that only he can see it, Latifah can't. But even after this occurs, we have one more thing to close out the episode that we're getting ready to walk to in episode 5 to come. And it is this scene right here. Now, as they continue to travel closer and closer towards the big gigantic tree, they spend the night again, camping out, sleeping, and it's literally rolling into nighttime. I believe it's rolling into nighttime, because Latifah is asleep, but she seems to be having another nightmare. But Rio uses some magic to calm her down. He actually did that before, in the scene prior. Uh, well, not in the scene prior, but in the other the other scene that I had stilled there. But when he uses the magic, he notices something happens behind him outside the tent. Some flash of light or something happened. This wolf pops up out of nowhere. They're both staring at each other. You know, Rio's like looking in amazement, and more than like a question like, what is this wolf doing out here? What is it? You know, what is it doing? Why is it staring? And then eventually this flash of light comes from this wolf, and Rio responds and saying Nani, saying what, and that pretty much closes out the episode. So this wolf must have a play a role in what's to come in episode 5, whatever that may be, whatever that's going to look like. Episode 4 was really, really good. I really did enjoy this episode. Like I said, there were various things that happened in this episode that tied Rio's past life of Haruto and reminded him of home. And again, like I said, you know, uh, uh, Latte, she must be a reincarnated person from the past and brought these various things to this world, and it can connect with Rio. And then of course, like I said, to Latifah is also, like I said, the little girl from the bus who died with him on the bus during that train accident, and she gets reincarnated, and then they eventually, and then like that's the thing on the bus, if you remember too, on the bus, the in her past life as Endo, she reached out to him as the bus was veering off and getting ready to get hit by the train. She reached out to him too in his direction. So which it just to me it just seems like there had to be more of a connection between these two in these past lives. Now, it's not so much a coincidence. I believe it's not so much a coincidence now, here specifically with everything that occurred in this episode, in episode 4 of The Assassin Girl. But with that, guys, what did you all think of this long review video of episode 4? Leave some comments in the comment section below. What did you all think of the episode itself when you sat down and watched episode 4? Let's talk about some things. But other than that, I will talk to you all next time with more Spirit Chronicles. Peace, guys.